Hey guys, today I want to talk a little bit about jumping without a parachute. And by that, I mean taking a leap before you're really quite ready, before you know where you're going to land, or if you're going to land safely, or if you don't, you run into trouble, or you're going to have a safety net to catch you. I took a leap in January of 2025 that profoundly changed me internally first, and then it began to show externally. I have been working in a job that was very demanding, emotionally draining, mentally exhausting, and I had reached a point of complete burnout. And I decided to quit my job. Well, it wasn't so much as I decided as it was I had this voice, not in a hallucination kind of way, but as an internal spirit kind of way, say to me, you need to quit your job. And that's just not who I am. It's not who I've ever been. I was raised in a generation where you don't quit a job without having another one, right? And I had a mortgage and bills to pay. I still have all those things, right? But I finally made a decision that first and foremost, I was going to take care of my mental health. And I had reached a point a few months before where I had to stop and take a good look at how I was treating myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and the things that I was doing that was harming me. And I didn't like what I saw. And I realized that it was up to me to change all of that. And I didn't know how, and I didn't know what it was going to look like. And so I just began a process of exploration. I got on YouTube, funny as that is, and I just started looking at some videos. I hadn't really gotten on YouTube. I hadn't really, that was really wasn't a part of my life. But I found people that I connected with about various things that have always been interesting to me, but I had never really pursued because they seemed too woo woo. I hate that word, seem too woo. I hate that word. What does that mean? It just means it's, to me, it just means that it's out of the social norm of things. I've always been interested in spirituality, uh, something greater than me, right? Look where I am. I'm by the river in nature, and I see evidence of that all around me. And I had been introduced to prayer a long time ago, and I made a decision to change some of my behaviors. And the biggest decision that I made back then at that point was I made a decision to start meditating again, which had been a practice that I had been involved with several years before, or many years before, and it had just kind of fallen to the wayside. And I made a commitment to myself. I am going to meditate every day, no matter what. And I started. And as a result of that, a few months later, I felt this urge within myself, this voice within myself that said, quit your job. And it was kind of like a conversation in my head, right? Like, oh God, what am I going to do if I quit my job? How am I going to pay my bills? And it was very clear to me that I need not focus on that, that I just need to focus on basically saving myself. And so, as ironic as it sounds, that's to me is what jumping without a parachute was about, right? It was about that moment of desperation, I think, that many of us get into where we know that we need to make a change, but we're not exactly sure what that change is going to look like or how we're going to do it or any of that kind of stuff. And I am not a person who generally does things like that. I mean, I can be impulsive for sure, but not with something of such major significance. I'm in my 60s, and I didn't know what I was going to do about a job, about health insurance, about anything. But I knew, as much as I know, that the light is outside, that if I didn't, that my light was going to go out. I had been in a place of grief and loss um, that had lasted many years. At one point, had turned to despair, I had gone into kind of hermit mode within myself because I needed to focus on myself and I needed to really figure out what I wanted the rest of my life to look like because my life had changed without my permission. um, my my wife was diagnosed with cancer in August of 2019, and she died in the 1st of November of 2019. And that's not a lot of time to even wrap your head around what it means, much less to try and figure out what you're going to do with your life. And so I did what I've always done, what I've always, or not always, what I've found that is just a natural part of who I am is just my resilience. I've been through a lot in my life and I know how to do things. I know how to put your head down and just work. And that's what I did. It wasn't that it's what I wanted to do, it's what I had no choice but to do. Because her death changed everything, as it does for many of us when we lose our spouses. You know, it changed everything about my life, from where I lived to how I earned money to who I considered my family to be, and it was fundamental. And I had to spend the first probably year, well, not even year, um, months, a few months to figure out what I was going to do, where I was going to go. You know, it meant selling my house and finding somewhere else to live and just all of that stuff that goes along with it. I don't want to get off into that tangent, but anyway, so I put my head down and I got it done. And as soon as I got to a new place to where I could just collapse, I did. And it probably took me a good 6 months to come up off the floor. And grief is like that, right? Grief can be uh, so debilitating that just getting up and breathing and getting through the day and putting one foot in front of the other is the best that you could do on some days. And that was the best that I could do on those days. But I did it. And hopefully, if you come along with me on this journey that I'm continuing to go on, you'll get to learn a little bit more about that. And hopefully, some of the things that I've been through and lived through can help you too. Because that's why I decided to do this, right? And why I call my channel Rooted for Resilience, because I am rooted. And I think so many of us are. We have these skills of perseverance and resiliency, and we know how to get things done, especially women, because a lot of us just don't have choices, right? About how we're going to do that. You know, so many single moms, for example, how am I going to take care of my kids? You know, if I don't have any support, you know what? Women get it done. They just dig in and they get it done. And it's not like they want to do it that way, right? But they just have to dig in and do it. And my whole life has kind of been like that. I've had a lot of very significant trauma early in my life, and that kind of forced me to develop that skill. But it served me well. And when I made this decision to quit my job, I didn't know what was coming next. Am I going to find another job? What am I going to do? I just knew that I did not have the capacity within myself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, to keep going the way that I was going. And that while that was scary, it was also exhilarating because I knew that it could be a clean slate. What I didn't know is how difficult and challenging that process was going to be. I just knew that it was going to be hard. But I also know that I know how to do hard. And I bet you know how to do hard too. We all go through hard things. We all live through hard things. We all have wisdom to share with one another that we can grow with each other into these new versions of ourselves, right? But sometimes we really need connection to do that. And so I hope through this channel to be able to give people some inspiration, hope that they can do it too, right? That none of us are really in this alone, that we're all interconnected, even if we feel isolated, even if we've isolated ourselves. We don't have to continue to isolate ourselves. We can do something different. We can make different choices. And that's what I did. I made different choices and I put those choices into action without really sometimes even really understanding the implications of that. And some of those have been really good and some of them have not been great, right? That have led to some pretty significant mistakes, mishaps. Because sometimes when you jump without a parachute, you don't realize how much you need one until you're about halfway down, right? And I'll use that metaphor probably for today because it just kind of fits. When you're trying something new that you've never done before, sometimes it's just a leap of faith that gets you out that door, right? That gets you going in the direction that you need to go. So, what about you? What has been your jump without a parachute? Let me know, in the comments below. Let me know. Let's help one another. Let's go through the rest of this journey, building connection, building resiliency, fine tuning our resiliency, finding a way forward no matter what's going on. Thanks, and I'll hope to see you soon.